Hi Cloud Chasers, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl Mousy and I'm the ultimate SL Cloud Chaser. So I logged in today during my break at work and my business partner and also the VP of M&M, which is Mousy's Makeover Clinic, happened to tell me about this sim that she discovered because Blueberry actually released something on their Facebook page saying that they made a shirt, and the shirt says "I can't breathe BLM," which stands for Black Lives Matter, and it's written on the shirt about 3 times. It's really cute. I like the ruching and the tie around it, and it's here at this sim against the Freedom Wall. So we're going to get into that really quickly. Let me tell you what this sim is about. If you hear noise in the background, it's my son. I'm trying to get him to be quiet, but he just won't do it. And it's kind of his time, so I can't really say much about it. But anyways, let me tell you what this sim is about. This sim basically highlights all the global atrocities that have occurred around the world. And this shirt I wanted to talk about, and I'm really glad that Blueberry made it, is because I want to talk about a particular atrocity that's affecting the African American community. And that's what we're noticing is that we have black men being, or women, Cassandra Bland, we can't forget her. We have black men and women dying in police custody, sometimes before even reaching the police station being processed, before going through due process. And what do I mean by due process? Which means being actually charged with the crime, sitting in front of their peers and being judged and having evidence reviewed and having a judge actually sentence them. And some of these quote unquote crimes are not, death penalty worthy crimes. And people are losing their lives and it's devastating families. So, this is what I want to discuss with you. So, what I want to discuss with you is kind of this. We're going to talk about Black Lives Matter, but we're going to talk about many other things as well. But what I want to discuss with you is this controversy surrounding Black Lives Matter. Like sometimes when we say Black Lives Matter, people feel like it means all lives does not matter. That's absolutely not what that means. Like all lives 100% matter, but we have an issue going on in the Black community in the United States where I think people have these schemas where you look at someone and then you judge them based on their appearance, whether they're Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, and you deem this person to be responsible or safe or dangerous and all these other things. And I think what's happening is that a lot of Black men are looked at and they're perceived to be dangerous or criminals or something terrible. And these men can be family men, they can be like athletes, and they can be just avid fitness addicts. For example, we have the story that happened in Georgia of a 25-year-old man. He's just 25 years old and he was jogging in a neighborhood. His name is hold on one second. His name is Amadou Arbery. He was just jogging and he was like shot at close range with a shotgun to the chest after being chased down like an animal through the streets because the people in that neighborhood, it was a father-son combination, thought that he resembled someone who was breaking in to neighborhoods earlier. And the law in that particular town said that they had the right to defend themselves or their property. And the same thing happened with Trayvon Martin. So guys, I really advise you to get involved in local politics, who you're going to vote for in terms of councilmen and people who represent you in your city, because what that's going to do is help to change the laws. And you need to push for certain laws to be changed and start at your locality and then work your way up to, like, say, your governor, your mayor, your governor, your senator, things like that. I'm not going to get really deep into politics right now, but I wanted to really explain to you guys who may be unaware of why this is an issue, why this is something that should really be discussed, and why this is something that we should take into consideration. This isn't socialism. This isn't liberalism. Isn't like a black pride or power movement. This is humanism. And you have to ask yourself, if I were the mother of a son and my son grew up to be an adult because people maybe had this false concept of him and he was shot down in the middle of the street. And all my mothers and fathers out there, you know how much work it takes to raise a child. You know how much effort goes in, the helping with the homework, the potty training, the getting them dressed for school, the sacrifices you make to put them in a good school. Like before the quarantine, I was traveling an hour before work to take Jackson to school in Manhattan. I wanted him to get into a good school. And I was waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning to bring my son to school in the morning, then commuting to work, and after work, commuting to pick up Jackson and bringing him back home. So, there are a lot of sacrifices that come into raising a happy, healthy, well adjusted child. And then for someone to look at your son or daughter and just see them as, something terrible without even getting to know them, seeing them as a criminal, seeing them as something valueless, and just gunning them down and shooting them in the middle of the street. Trayvon Martin, I'll bring up again. He was a child, he was a young boy who was going to the store, not even 18 years old, to get Skittles and like Arizona iced tea, and he was shot down in the middle of the street because he was wearing a hoodie and because someone felt like he was dangerous, someone who didn't know him, someone who didn't even ask his name or get to know anything about him. And that's a huge problem that's going on. Um, I hope that, me sharing this information with you and what my viewpoint on this is, just shed some light, and it helps you understand that there are certain things that we cannot allow. And I think that I believe that she's also an artist. I believe that Carisha Terabun, she really, and I'm going to pull up her profile. I asked her to come on my channel because I want to speak to her about why she decided to create this sim, and I want to talk to her about where this comes from. And so the Wall of Freedom, she has it in her pics. She says this is an ongoing original build based on my thoughts of where fiction meets nonfiction, or is it where fiction meets or nonfiction meets fiction? Warning, this is a platform about arts, religion, and politics, okay? And I know a lot of people sometimes want to be safe and they don't want to get involved in politics because they feel like, they don't want to be polarizing in any one direction. And I don't think that you should feel that way. I think that if something is wrong, we should just outright say that it's wrong. So let's talk about the Wall of Freedom. It says, Blueberry has honored my build to place her free gift concerning the death of George Floyd. The gift is just to the left of the sign. Feel free to look around. There are few rules. Please remain only up on the platform as the land beneath you is privately owned. Anyone using this area as a type of playground will be banned. And it's what I said before. This is an ongoing build based on my thoughts of where fiction meets nonfiction or where nonfiction means fiction. There are sidewalk boards placed around. Feel free to click on them. And this is one here where you can get some information. And it says the platform is about art, politics, and religion. If you are offended by anything, you have the right to leave. Feel lucky, as there are millions that do not have that right. And that's so very true. There's a mailbox on the corner. You may feel free to leave any ideas or thoughts on things that you wish to see. Okay, and so let me just tell you briefly what this sim will cover. So what this sim covers, there is a kind of homage or a kind of like awareness that the sim owner wants you to have about certain events that have occurred around the world, right? So what we're going to talk about, I think this is extremely thought-provoking. I think it's really important. And I wanted to highlight something different on my channel regarding what happens around the world and things that we should be aware of. So this is going to cover the Holocaust, Auschwitz. We're going to talk about banned books. We're going to talk about banned art. We're going to talk about the death of, citizens in the custody of the law, of, people we should trust, to take care, to keep our streets safe and to keep them free of criminals, but also to honor the fact that people are innocent until proven guilty. We're going to talk about the death of Michael Stewart, and he was a man, African-American man, who received recognition after his death because he was like spraying graffiti on the walls, but he in essence died in police custody. So there are tons of things that we're talking about. This is not just about Black Lives Matter. This is about all the global injustices and then our awareness and what we need. And it's helping us to think about what kind of world do we want our children to live in? What kind of world should our children grow up in? Okay, so let's just take a look around. And I just want to point out here, so if you click on these boards here, you can get information, and the Welcome Freedom was one of the ones that I pulled up, and it says Blueberry made this free gift, and I'll just walk around to show you some different things here around the sim, okay? There are like tickets where you can talk about many different issues, but I think where I'm going to start here is going to be book burning, right? So we're going to talk about book burning and we're going to enter the public library. And let's see here. Actually, no, let's not do this one here. We're going to talk about the book burning because I'd rather talk about that right now. So if you go into the public library and it says there's some, it says government censorship protecting you from reality, right? And then there's an article, a blurb of an article. It says 5 tons of books seized in the Vice War. Society and annual reporting says that it's not a snooping organization. And so it just talks about the books that were seized during the Vice War. And then there's a library here. And so the library gives you, this is a list of banned books and the reasons why they have been banned and to go here. And, you can feel free to look at these books and their titles and determine whether or not you agree with this. And these books are not anything like, extremely detrimental to our society, but it's just kind of like what happens with censorship and when you allow art, literature, and free thought to be kind of capped, like what can happen within society. All right, so we're going to walk around here. There are tons of things that we're going to look at. I'm sorry, it's a little bit laggy, so I'm trying to walk here. So let me just, don't mind me, just wait till I get to where I'm getting to. I haven't had a chance to look at all of this here, but the more you look at, the more you tend to uncover. So let's see what this is here. All right, so this is Zuccotti Park, formerly known as Liberty Plaza Park. It's a publicly accessible park in Lower Manhattan, and it's located in a privately owned space controlled by Brookfield Properties and Goldman Sachs. It says the park was created in 1968 by Pittsburgh-based United States Steel after the property owners negotiated its creation with city officials, right? It was named Liberty Park Plaza because it was situated besides One Liberty Plaza, which is located between Broadway, Trinity Place, Liberty Street, and Cedar Street. The park's northwest corner is across the street from Four World Trade Center. It's been popular with local tourists and financial workers. The site was the location of the first coffee house in colonial New York, the King Arms, which opened under ownership of Lieutenant John Hutchins. Oh my God. I'm sorry, let me just close out all these things here. On November 5th, 1773, summoned by the Sons of Liberty, a huge crowd assembled outside the coffee house to denounce the Tea Act and agents of East India trading who were handling cargoes of duty tea. It is perhaps the first public demonstration in opposition to the Tea Act in the American colonies. So that's why she chose to feature this, because this was a space where it was the first place where the Tea Act was actually challenged. So we have this area here, okay? We're going to look at 2 more areas. We looked at the public library, which kind of featured the banning of books. So, and I also want to take you to the Auschwitz area because I found that super interesting as well. And so we'll walk through. I'm sorry, guys, if there's a little bit of noise in the background because it's during the day. It's 12:31 my time, 9:31 SLT time. So that is just what's happening here. It's just like day and everyone is like kind of moving. Everyone's kind of gathered around the Freedom Wall in case you're wondering where they're at and what they're doing. And there's just tons of people here just exploring. This truly reminds me of like the MoMA. Like it does. It's like kind of interactive. Not really interactive, but in the MoMA you could put those headphones, or most museums you put the headphones on and you could find out information about things you may not have known about. All right, so now we're at Auschwitz, and it says, in real life, this build would cover 31 sims. This build is only one about Auschwitz, right? It's a mix of what took place and what could take place if society is not very careful. So they give you 2 ways to walk, and she just kind of puts things up like for whites and non-whites to show like the separatism that occurred in Jim Crow United States. Illegal aliens, I want you out of my country. There's just some flyers and posters here that shows, discrimination against people, a little xenophobia, things like that, who are not American citizens. And it's waiting room for coloreds only, and just some like information like that you could see here. And it shows people who are lying down in distress, kind of separated from their families, so this is a good visual representation. So I thought that this would be interesting for you to see. There's tons of like decals on the wall, like history will repeat itself. History repeats. Like if you are not aware and educated about what's happened in our past and what the strength of silence does, note it's your your civic duty to report any and all illegal aliens because they've broken the law. Okay. And here's Ripley here. Ripley is the VP of M&M, and there she is there. So let me just zoom into her. She looks really cute. She's a domino. We've been here for quite a while. Hi, Ripley. She can't hear me. Okay. So let's get some information here. Talk about some other stuff. So it says August Landmaser was a worker at the Blom and Voss shipyard in Hamburg, Germany. He is known as the possible identity of the man appearing in 1936 photograph, conspicuously refusing to perform the Nazi salute with the other workers. In 1935, he became engaged to Irma Eckler, a Jewish woman. They registered to be married in Hamburg, but the Nuremberg laws enacted a month later prevented it. On the 29th of October 1935, Landmesser and Eckler's first daughter Ingrid was born. In 1937, Landmesser and Eckler tried to flee Denmark but were apprehended. She was again pregnant and was charged and found guilty in July 1937 of dishonoring the race under Nazi racial laws. He argued that neither he nor Eckler knew that she was fully Jewish and was acquitted on the 27th May 1938 for lack of evidence. With the warning that a repeat offense would result in a multi-year prison sentence, the couple publicly continued their relationship, and on July 15, 1938, he was arrested again and sentenced to 2.5 years in the Borchborough concentration camp. And guys, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong because I'm sure there's like some accents and stuff. Different countries pronounce different letters differently. Eckler was detained by the Gestapo and held at the prison Fulschenbelt, where she gave birth to a second daughter, Irene. From there, she was sent to the Oranienburg concentration camp, the Lichtenberg concentration camp for women, and then the women's concentration camp at Ravensbrück. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine that, having a newborn and then being sent to a concentration camp? She gave birth to her daughter in a concentration camp. That's terrible. A few letters came from Irma Eckler until January 1942. It's believed that she was taken to Bernenberg Euthanasia Center in February 1942, where she was amongst the 14,000 killed. In the course of post-war documentation in 1949, she was pronounced legally dead with a date of April 28, 1942. Meanwhile, Landmesser was discharged from prison on January 19, 1941. He worked as a foreman for the Haltige Company Post in February 1944. He was drafted into Penal Battalion, the 999th 4th Infantry Battalion. He was declared killed in action after fighting Croatia on October 17, 1944. Like Eckler, he was legally declared dead in 1949. Their children were taken into the city orphanage. This is horrible, guys. Ingrid was later allowed to live with her maternal grandmother, where Irene went to a home of a foster parents in 1941. Ingrid was also placed with foster parents after her grandmother's death in 1953. The marriage of August Landmesser and Irmine Eckler was recognized retroactively by the Senate of Hamburg in the summer of 1951. In autumn of that year, Ingrid assumed the surname Landmesser. Irene continued to use the surname Eckler. So imagine how these children's lives were affected, right? And so this is a homage to August Landmesser and Irma Eckler, just to give you an example. Guys, that's really horrible. Like, I'm not going to read this all to you. You guys have to go here, like, kind of explore the sim and read about this. So we're going to talk about Operation Valkyrie very briefly. On the 20th of July, 1944, Klaus von Stauffenberg and other conspirators attempted to assassinate Adolf Hitler. The plot was the culmination of efforts by several groups in the German resistance to overthrow the Nazi German government. The failure of the assassination attempt and the attendant military coup d'etat was to follow the lead of Gestapo to arrest more than 7,000 people, of whom they executed 4,980 people. So there's a lot of death. There's a lot of trauma occurring in families when we allow global atrocities to occur and not say anything. All right, let's look at this one here. This is going to be, we're not going to read this entire thing. We're not going to read this entire thing, but I'm just going to tell you what this is about. The White Rose was a nonviolent intellectual resistant group in the Third Reich, led by a group of students including Hans and Sophie Scholl. They attended the University of Munich. The group conducted an anonymous leaflet and graffiti campaign that called for active oppression of the Nazi regime. Their activities started in Munich on the 27th of June 1942 and ended with the arrest of the core group by the Gestapo on the 18th of February 1943. They, as well as other members and supporters of the group who carried on distributing the pamphlet, faced show trials by the Nazi People's Court, and many of them were sentenced to death or imprisonment. So there are many people who lost their lives trying to speak out against what the Nazi regime was actually doing. And without these brave people, who knows how long this could have gone on? How long people could have been put in gas chambers, tortured, killed, tracked down like animals, have their family legacies destroyed, generations of people split up. You don't know what's happening to your young. You don't know what's happening to your old. Like, these are atrocities that we cannot allow in a civil society. That's just my personal opinion. Let me know what you guys think of it. But I really, really encourage you to come here and just sort of educate yourself. And if you don't know about these things, this is a good place to stop by an SL where you can learn. You can learn. Like, you can drop by, pick up one of these note cards. If something interests you, take it a step further. Maybe Google it, maybe get a book, or just maybe open your mind about why you should be aware and speak out about things that are not right. Because left unchecked, these things could escalate to concentration camps. It can escalate into chattel slavery. It can escalate into a lot of things that should not be happening in the United States. This is just my personal opinion. I know that illegal aliens were detained at the border and the mothers were separated from their children. And some people had the mindset where, like, it's like, oh, you shouldn't have been coming here. So if you didn't come here and you didn't bring your children here to break the law, you wouldn't have been separated from your children. I still think that even in cases of war, and this is not an illegal immigrant crossing the border is not a case of war. And I'm only speaking from the perspective because I don't know how much I agree with that to begin with, right? But I'm only speaking from the perspective of, well, yes, this is a law. This person has broken the law. They haven't come across to the United States with the correct paperwork. But even in instances in war, there are ways to act and behave, right? There's still laws and there's rules and regulations so that we don't have tortures and murders and things like that. And I think in a situation where someone breaks the law and their children are involved, like, we have to handle it gently. Like, children shouldn't be kept in cages away from their parents. That could be really scary. That could be really traumatizing. So if you see something that you don't necessarily agree with, I challenge you to speak up on it. I challenge you to post about it on your Facebook or your Instagram real life or even in SL, and just create awareness. And what it does is let people know, like, there is a line that has to be drawn. Like, there's a line in the sand, and we're not going to tolerate anything being done as a society. There are checks and balances. The people are checks and balances, and we will look at it. We will assess things that are going on, and we will ensure that this world is a safe world for our children and grandchildren to inherit. Anyways, I'll leave it there. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And I hope I didn't get too serious on you, and this is something that you could actually enjoy and, has provoked some thought. I want to thank the owner, her name is Krishna, for actually creating this sim and creating this environment so that I have something to talk about. She agreed to be on my channel later on for an interview so that we could talk. It won't be long, maybe 20 minutes. She could tell us what her inspiration was and why she created this. Guys, this is one little part of the sim. There's so much to explore here. So if you want to come with your SL friends and explore, please, I encourage you to do that. Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you for watching my channel. Bye.